What's going on, Lean Construction World? This is Tim Ho, and we're back with the Lean in Action series. I'm here today with my friend LR Weeden. LR, how you doing?
Hey man, I'm great this morning, man. If I was any better, I had to pay luxury taxes, Tim. So I
Hey,
can't
love to hear
complain.
it, man. Love to hear it. I'm really glad to have you here. I know we've been trying to coordinate this session for what feels like months, but really been dialing it in the last couple of weeks. So really glad we're getting together here around the holidays. We found some time to get this conversation flowing. LR, I'm really excited. I know you're one of the first people to receive LCI's CPC designation or certification. So I can't wait to dive into that with you. But before we dive into those weeds, let's just start with a little bit about LR. Love to hear about who you are and kind of how you got to where you're at on your journey.
All righty, man. I'll go ahead and start it off. You know, LR is actually my first two initials. First name is actually Leandris, so I kind of started utilizing it a few years ago because I was like, oh man, my name's got lean in it, so I'm gonna start running with it. You know, so
Love it.
man, grew up in St. Louis, went to college in Illinois, got a degree in construction management, been in commercial construction space for probably about the last 18 years. A lot of it has been in healthcare, but, you know, I got exposed to some lean things probably in about 2014 when I was working in Cincinnati, at Cincinnati Children's Hospital. And we were doing some things there like pods, what we call plan of the days, which is essentially a daily huddle. We had phase scheduling meetings, which is basically phase 4 planning. We had trades doing weekly work plans, so we were trying to utilize some things. And back then, people were like, "Oh, this stuff comes from Toyota." I'm like, "Okay, what the heck does that got to do with construction?" You know what I mean? So I did it because that's what everybody else was doing. You know, didn't think much about it until a few years after that. So that's kind of really how I got exposed and started with anything related to lean as it relates to construction.
Were you guys calling it lean at that time? Like, was it being advertised as we're doing lean on this project, or here's some lean tools we're implementing, or was it more of this works really well, so you're going to go do a daily huddle? And,
you know, to be honest,
try to plan your weeks out a little better.
I don't think we called it lean. I don't think we called it anything. I mean, like I said, we had these designations. We called them pod meetings, which there we had various projects ranging from something could be as much as 5K just paint and refresh all the way up to full-blown demo and renovation of healthcare spaces. So we had these pod meetings. Like I said, we called them plan of the days. We didn't really have a lean terminology for it. And then I kind of heard some people talk about like the Toyota way. As I was there, I would hear this term come up, and I really didn't know anything about the Toyota way. Of course, Toyota actually had a plant not too far from Kentucky. So I'm like, oh, maybe they bought some things from there, you know. I had no clue it had anything to do with a whole lean methodology or last planner system. Never heard of last planner system until probably around 2018.
Oh, that's interesting, man. See, I think that's kind of similar to my journey, right? I started finding that meeting with the foreman every day was super beneficial for me, but everyone together instead of like a one-off meeting here and there. It's like, I'm just going to start meeting with these guys together because I'm tired of one foreman asking me a question, and then I got to go track down another foreman and ask him what he's doing and what his plan is for tomorrow. It's like, I'm just going to start doing it every morning, right? And I hadn't heard about lean when I started doing that. And then, you know, sure enough, find out that that's the daily huddle, right? That's the whole emphasis there. So I almost wonder if there's a benefit to lean implementation when you don't put a tagline on it or you don't put a label on it. You know, it sounds like that's kind of how you got introduced to it too.
It is. And even now, man, I don't care what people call it, lean, building forward, lean 2.0. To me, it's a mindset, and it's more of an operation strategy, you know, of how you deliver projects to customers, you know. How do you deliver that asset to them? So whatever we call it, it's a mindset. You know, it's one thing to get people to want to try new things, but you almost have to go from getting people to want to try new things to get people to want to be something different than who they currently are and where they're at in their career. And that's the real tough thing to do.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, it's that cultural shift that we're trying to make in that industry that's pretty hard-nosed on the way things have always been. But, you know, I think one of my early mentors, he still wouldn't call himself a lean builder, but he's one of the first guys that got me interested in this sort of stuff with the daily huddles. And his biggest thing was the respect, right? He'd come up through the trades. I came out of college. I didn't come up through trades. I always show the guys, I say, you don't want these hands working, man. It'll be dangerous out there. But he brought me into the respect for people. And he was like, that's his biggest thing. And you take that mindset, and if you were to tell him, oh man, that's a core tenet of lean, he'd be like, yeah, whatever. That's just the way that we should be doing things. And so it's interesting. You strip the labels down, and we're finding that the right way to do things is the lean way to do things. So you're on that project
absolutely.
there in Cincinnati that you mentioned, and sure you guys were finding some success, it sounds like, with your pods and your weekly work plan. And did that inspire you to start looking a little bit more into what is this whole Toyota way and what is lean?
To be honest with you, no, it didn't. I was there for about 2 years or so. And like I said, that was just kind of the way things happen. In total transparency, the weekly work plans weren't really utilized the way they should have been. We kind of did phase pool plan meetings, and those would go away. We would make them, but we didn't make the work ready after that. At that point, and then we would have guys turn in weekly work plans. Some people would, some people wouldn't, and so it was just kind of a formality of, hey, this is what we're supposed to be doing. This is what we're trying to get good at. Let's see how we can do it. So we started the process there, and I left that job and a couple of years later, and didn't really get engaged with lean again until, well, I say lean, until about 2018, 2019. And finally, I found the term last planner system, and that sparked a light bulb in my mind, like, okay, last planner system, what is this, So I started, trying to figure out what last planner system is. And I was like, okay, this is some of the stuff that we were doing in Cincinnati. So I'm kind of familiar with this stuff, you know what I mean? So that kind of really got me diving in more. And, the Lean Builder book was one of the books that I gravitated towards, obviously, because it's written from a construction standpoint. Yeah. And then, from there, I kind of started seeing all these other resources about, lean, and whether it was the Toyota Way Field Manual, this is lean, just really trying to broaden my horizon and my knowledge base on what this is, so I could start learning and trying to implement things myself.
Yeah, I think that's huge. You kind of took the personal responsibility. Sounds pretty similar to my journey, right? I'm trying to build my toolbox up with as many lean tools as I can. And then, I've switched, we were kind of talking before we hit record here, kind of switching roles now to getting out of the superintendent role and more into an owner's rep construction manager. I can kind of start pulling from that tool bag and saying, hey, I think it'd be beneficial if we started doing this little thing here, this little thing here, and hopefully, changing the minds of some of these builders out there to start implementing a better way of doing things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting that you kind of had a start with it and then you kind of faded off. And I was like, oh, that's cool. We did that at that job for a while. And then you found your way back to it as you were talking about the weekly work plans and not being utilized. I think that's one of the biggest hurdles we face as an industry is kind of that. Mm-hmm. I don't want to call it fake lean because I think that's too general, right? But not fully utilizing the tool, because I've been on job sites where we've done the same thing. And you have this nice detailed worksheet that these guys prep as they come to the weekly work plan meeting, and a project engineer or superintendent takes it and sets it off to the side. And it's like, all right, that was great, but no one's doing constraint management. No one's documenting in a virtual or even a physical manner on a constraints log to work through.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'd like to hear a little bit more about the LCI CPC and how you went about getting this certification.
Okay. LCI CPC. So the CPC is a designation that Lean Construction Institute came out with for Certified Practitioner of Construction. It's not really a true test, like you go through some material, you take an exam, and then you do that. It's kind of the opposite. It really, there is an exam that you take immediately, and that exam is really testing your technical competency on lean knowledge, terminologies, things like that are related to lean in construction. The next portion, which is the second half of it, is basically what they call a capabilities assessment, which is almost like a work portfolio that you're putting together. You're going through LPS, all the items of LPS. You're documenting how you did those things. You provide artifacts to show how you use those things in the field. And then the second half of that assessment is looking at some other concepts like visual communication, target value delivery, 5S, 5Y problem solving, and showing how you utilize those on a job site as well. So it's really more of an assessment of your technical competency and how you utilize those things to help on a job site, or not help, however you want to look at it.
That's awesome. So what inspired you to go for that cert? And I know I saw some communication from LCI about it. It's been about a year, maybe the last 9 months or so.
Yeah, they I believe they first started releasing it Congress of 2022. So they started putting the message out there. And then after 2022, they sent out an email, LCI did, to say, hey, we're looking for some folks who are interested in being like the first early adopters of this thing. Is this something you want to do? So I signed up immediately for it. It's like, oh man, this looks pretty cool. You know, it's through LCI. Hey, we'll see what it is. Didn't really know what I was getting myself into, you know. So for me, it was being able to be on the leading edge of that and say, hey, you know, I was a part of getting this thing going. And it literally almost like trial and error, because when I signed up for it, I think I was the first person to actually take the exam and get the exam complete. And then I had to wait 5 or 6 months because this thing was still getting baked in the process.
They were still trying to figure it out. Yeah.
So then
they're like, oh, geez, someone's doing this.
Yeah. So once the capabilities assessment came out, I said, you know, I'm just going to dedicate some time, whether it's, you know, a couple hours a day, and get this thing knocked out, and, you know, try to be one of the first ones in the country, or really in the world, to receive this designation. So,
yeah, that's awesome. What an honor. I know we were at Congress this year, and they kind of highlighted the 4 of you guys that had received the designation there, and I think that's just pretty awesome to have. So now that you've got this CPC, how does that impact your current role? Right, because like we were talking a little bit before, you're no longer a superintendent. You mind describing kind of what you currently do and how you're implementing lean?
Yep. Currently, I would describe myself as a lean advocate, lean champion here at Lean Construction. Really trying to support project teams to implement lean, working with owners, trying to push some of the initiatives that they want to use. But I believe that this certification, number one, it kind of gives you more of a voice. You know, people have seen, and LCI has highlighted, like, hey, we have these folks out here who are getting the CPC. So, and I was reading a book probably about 2 weeks ago, actually from one of the speakers that was at LCI, Max Story, and he talked about how leadership is really about influence. And it doesn't matter your title. You don't have to be a vice president to have influence in a company. It's really about how you can influence people. And that influence starts with getting folks trust. You know, trust is the baseline of everything in construction. And if you don't have trust, you can't get reliable promises. You're not going to get commitments from folks. You don't have trust within the teams. People don't want to work together because they don't trust one another. So in our industry, man, trust is huge. You know, so that's really, I think, one of the things that that CPC designation is allowing me to get in front of people so I can get to know more folks, gain their trust, and then have that level of influence inside the company to be like, hey, maybe we should start looking at lean project delivery.
Yeah, it kind of gives you that foot in the door, and almost like, not in a bad way, but an authority to speak from, right? Like, I'm not just some Joe Schmo off the street that read a book and walked in here. Like, I've been vetted and I understand this, and I'm passionate enough to have devoted time and energy into receiving this certification. I think that's huge. It gives you that opportunity to influence folks. One of the things you were saying there really sparked my interest on working with owners for how they want to implement, kind of similar to my current role of, you know, you got to try to use that influence. But to influence people, you have to have their trust.
Yes.
What do you think is the best way to build trust with a new team?
Vulnerability. I think asking a question, you know, we're in a room, I don't know anybody. I go in this room and say, hey, I want everybody to introduce themselves, tell me what you do, and then maybe give me a challenge that you had growing up as a kid. It makes people think, makes people stop, and you've created a sense of vulnerability within the room. Most of the people are going to think about it. And if you go around the room, say you got 10 people in there and you guys have all answered that question, we've all made ourselves vulnerable at this point. We've allowed ourselves to now start building some type of trust and rapport amongst one another just by a simple exercise like that. And really, I think the 5 dysfunctions of a team is where I read that at before. And so that was one of the things that stuck out to me, is how do you go about first establishing trust? Because that's really at the bottom of that pyramid. If you don't have trust, you can't have anything else built off of that. You can't really have a team, you know. There's no way that you can be moving as a single organism towards one goal without trust.
Yeah, trust is, I mean, it's everything. It's hard to build for a lot of folks, and one of the easiest things to dismantle and tear apart.
Yep,
right?
Absolutely.
It's I think you're right there with vulnerability. You got to come in and humble yourself. I think on one point, that's something I always try to do when I'm coming into a new team, is come in be vulnerable, be humble, share who you are, and really open people up. And you know, you got to deal with different personalities and how they take things. But that's a really interesting icebreaker question. I never heard that in all the silly icebreakers I've been a part of. I think going with something like that, it probably stops people in their tracks and goes, "Oh, we got to get real." But you know, that's all part of lean, right? Is being vulnerable and building a community and building a group that's got that psychological safety and that feels comfortable enough to get into really what's going on.
Yes, so, absolutely.
That's awesome. What would you say, and maybe this is leading into it, is the biggest hurdle that the construction industry faces with lean implementation?
Oh man, that's a loaded question, Tim.
I know. Building off that vulnerability and trust, I think that's something that, for me,
vulnerability and trust is huge. I think from what I've seen, man, in my last year and a half, 2 years, one of the biggest downsides that we have is the emphasis on project management and the emphasis not on true production. A lot of people talk about productivity. Nobody's talking about production. There's a difference between the two. And really, when you look at project management is really a lot of administrative tasks. You know, none of those administrative tasks really add value to the asset that we're trying to turn over, which is the building. The only thing that's really adding value to those assets is getting into the production and how do we maximize and increase that efficiency there. And until we learn more about true production and construction, then we're going to be a ways off from where we want to be. You know, so I think really getting folks expanding our knowledge, because you don't know what you don't know. Needless to say, you know, I've had to learn, unlearn, and relearn some things over the past couple of years, and I continue to do that, you know, because that's a part of that continuous improvement cycle. So we really got to get in the mindset of, you know, continuous improvement. There was a quote I heard the other day that says, "You don't have to be sick to get better," meaning that there's always opportunities to get better. You know what I mean? So if you take that mindset into every day and look for ways to improve, that's the biggest thing. I mean, we get so complacent. You know how it is working on the job site, and we're focused on, you know, what we got to do in the next week, the next 2 weeks, and we never really step back to think about, now, how do we optimize the whole?
Isn't it silly how sometimes you'll look at a process and you start planning out your week, and if you don't come at it with a continuous improvement mindset, you just look at like all of these hurdles you have to get through to get to your task. Yep. And we become so complacent that it's like, that's just part of what we do. I have to route this over here so this person can sign it, so this person can look at it, so that I can go get this, and then I can walk over here, I can finally put this work in place. And it's like, it just becomes, and everyone in the room accepts that as, okay, yeah, those are the steps you have to take. And no one's willing to go, wait, like, time out. Why do we need those 10 steps in between? Like you're getting at, the important part is that you're safely putting that work in place.
Yes. So one of the biggest things that you're speaking of is the why. I think we should always start with the why, you know, because a lot of times people don't even know why they're constructing this project for the client. You know, what purpose is this project going to serve? And how do we come into that? You know, if we can keep everybody aligned with that why, that's a big thing. You got to keep that out in front of folks so people know why they're here.
Yeah, I'm super blessed. I work in biopharma for the most part. That's our niche. And, you know, most of the facilities we're building are either storing or producing some life-saving medicine in some capacity. So a lot of our clients will come to Project Charter with a video I've had at some points, or at least a PowerPoint of you know, the work you're doing is enabling this. And then I always encourage, when I was a superintendent, I made it part of our orientation. Now as an owner's rep, I just encourage the general contractors I'm working with, like, this is your why. And you need to explain this to these people. When you sit in a lunchroom, you know, and you're going through your safety presentation with, you know, your weekly toolbox talk with the 100 people, and you say, how many people in here have been impacted by cancer at some point in their life? You know someone, or you personally have. Every hand in that room goes up. It's like, okay, we're building a facility that's going to facilitate, you know, X drug or this going on. And you see that light bulb go off in quite a few folks. And it's like, they take a little bit more pride in the work they're doing. And I think establishing that why is one of the most important things you can do on a construction project.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
So I want to take it back a quick little bit there. You had said there's a difference between, I hope I get this right, productivity and production.
Yes, sir.
Do you mind elaborating on that? I think A couple of weeks ago, we were on a call, and you had posed this question to a group.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about it since.
Productivity is really taking raw materials and interested in making them into something. You know, you got a sheet metal guy. He wants to maximize his productivity in installing sheet metal. You got a plumber that wants to maximize their productivity in installing things in the wall. That's all good, and it's really local optimization. Production is really focusing on how do you make the work flow through processes and get throughput. Productivity does not equal production because they're two different mindsets, you know, because you can have in the terms of construction, productivity is more so get as much as you can as soon as you can. That doesn't equate to getting throughput through a system, you know. So it's two totally different things. But in construction, we're typically taught, because of CPM, is to push, start as much work as you can as soon as you can. All that does is put whip into the system unnecessarily, and you get a bunch of variability introduced to it. And when I say whip, I don't mean work in place. I mean work in process. It's two different things, because the work in place is basically a PM, earned value management term. That's how trades get paid for what work they put in place. Work in process has to relate to how much you have that is unfinished products going through the system to actually get you an asset, whether it be, you know, a finished wall or a finished room. How have you determined that to get that throughput? So then the mindset shifts. Like when I go to a job site now, I look at how much work is in process, you know, and I can walk through and be like, man, this looks awesome. You got all this frame, you got all this pipe in the air, but I wonder how long these walls have been sitting here without drywall on them. If it's more than, you know, a couple days, we could have delayed this work and got the same result because these walls have just been sitting here. But nobody ever thinks that way. Everybody says, push, 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 start as much as you can as soon as you can. And it doesn't get you any closer to the goal, because my goal is to complete work, not start work.
Right. It's like that productivity mindset of each individual trades, like living with their blinders on. You know, you always see it when you first get to an empty job site, right? Or I do a lot of TI. So you get to an empty warehouse, sheet metal I want to throw my HVAC up in the air, and then everyone else can go. And it's like, well, have we thought about who's above you? Or have we thought about like maybe trying to get some priority walls up and get some stuff framed for you, and we can top down in these areas? And that's an interesting, really little caveat to those two different words, because I'm sure most people see them as almost being the same thing, right? Like a productive job is a good job, and it's like, well, are we being productive on the right things?
Yes. And because when you look at it, I mean, you can type in, hell, now we got AI now. I bet if you type in any AI, what's the difference between productivity and production, they're going to give you what it is, and they're two different things, you know, even though they're, I would say, I don't know if you call them synonyms or what, but productivity does not equal production.
Yeah, I think I see it as like production is the bigger picture, right? It's how the whole thing's coming together. Productivity, you can go be productive on non-value add tasks.
Yes.
And then when you take that, expound that just to a job site level, like I think there's you got a lot to that statement there, because your plumber might think that they are just being the most productive crew out there. And it's like, but you're hurting everyone behind you.
Exactly. You know? So it's just really getting people a new set of glasses and lenses to look towards. I mean, if you can get the basics of some things, it'll change the way you see stuff. You know, like I always tell people, you can't unsee things, and you don't know what you don't know. So once you see something, it's like, oh crap, man, you know, man, we should be doing this a little bit differently. We should think about doing things a little differently. But if you haven't seen it and you're unaware, kind of living in that unaware state, it doesn't bother you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the thing that putting on that lean lens does to you, right? It makes you see all of these inefficiencies or wastes and these constraints that you're just allowing to be worked into your daily system. So at Leighton, in your current role, is that like it sounds like your job is probably to go kind of job site to job site and help get lean implemented. Are you working with staff that's at all different levels on their lean journey? Are you getting a group of people that have never done it all the way to up to just crews and job sites that you're just checking in on?
Yep.
I'm curious if you kind of expand on this.
Variety of folks that you're working with along the journey. You know, we do have some teams that have been doing it for, 7-10 years, and there's some folks that, you know, they don't even know what lean is. You know what I mean? So there's a variety there, and it's really the biggest thing, man, is the respect for the people part and connecting with people. If you don't connect with folks, and there's no way you're going to be able to influence them, you know, because needless to say, what Tim values may be different from what Leandris values. But one thing I do know that we have in common is that Tim values Tim and I value me. So in saying that, I need to get to know Tim and understand what he values so I can connect with him, build that trust, and then start to be able to influence the way that we deliver projects for that particular job. Otherwise, you're just going to be out there, man, trying to boil the ocean.
Yeah, it ain't going to happen. So when you first jump onto a job site there, it sounds like you probably don't come in and day one, we're doing this, this, and this. You probably spend some time trying to get to know not only the latent team that you've got, but as well as the general contractor, or sorry, not the general contractor, the trade partners that you've got on site, yep, and try to find what drives them and what pushes them.
Absolutely. I mean, really, I'm getting there. I'm there. I'm hanging out with folks. You know what I mean? You may see me out there pushing a broom, picking up trash that's on the ground and somebody may have dropped. I mean, I'm stopping guys because typically people have their name on a hard hat. You know, hey, I want to know how folks are doing. You know, how you doing, and not only how you doing. I go so far as to ask people. You know what I'm saying? How's your mental health today? Make them stop in their tracks and really, really think about, you know, hey, what's going on? You know, and a lot of times people, believe it or not, just that one simple question, they'll say, hey, man, you know, man, it's been a rough past couple of weeks for me. X, Y, Z is going on, you know. But if you never stop to ask anybody that question or get to know an individual, you'll never know what's going on. And then just that alone kind of gives you a foot in the door. Like, man, this guy really asked me how my mental health was today. You know, nobody's ever asked me that before. You know? So just something as simple as that, man. Just let people know that, hey, I really care about you. I'm not here because I'm a lean guy, and I want to work to make this job and the work that we do better, not only for our clients, but everybody really in the supply chain, you know, owners, vendors, suppliers, folks we work with internally and externally.
Man, making those personal relationships, it's the key, right? You're going to get a lot more accomplished if you can come in there and truly relate to people. I find that, you know, keep mentioning my new role here as an owner's rep, trying to get that that same feeling where you're just out in the field, just talking to people, understanding where they're at. You know, I like to bring up during the holidays. The holidays are great for a lot of people, but they're also hard for a lot of folks out here. And trying to bring that mental health awareness into it and bring respect for all those people is huge. So, no, man, that's great. I think we'll get ready to close this call out here. I do want to hear from you, your thoughts on why more superintendents don't implement lean. Why? Or I'll take that bigger than just superintendents. Why don't more people embrace lean construction thoughts and teachings and practices?
Honestly, man, like I said earlier, man, you don't know what you don't know. And I think most people are into the mindset that they've become pretty good at what they do and it's been successful for them. And I tell people that you shouldn't strive to be successful. You really should be striving to provide value, and the success is going to come as an output. In order to provide value, you got to really look at who your customer is. So if your customer is somebody down the line, you know, how do I provide value to my trade partners? How do I provide value to my subcontractors? It isn't going out there with a CTM schedule and saying, hey, do what's on the schedule, and this is what we say. You know, the planning of that schedule and the actual execution of that work is totally disconnected now. And we feel that this project controls with an S is controlling the project. And those words don't even mean the same thing. You know what I mean? Project controls is really updating. When you update a schedule, you're updating stuff that's already happened. Yeah. When we're talking about control, we're really talking about the direction that the job is going. So it's two different things, even though people interchange the words. So doing that, you're going to have to get the people engaged that are actually doing the work. Needless to say, man, some people may feel a little uncomfortable when they go to engage the folks that are doing the work because they think it's taking the power away from them. But it's actually empowering the people, and they're going to give you more in return if you allow them to open their creative minds. You know, I mean, there's two questions that you could ask. I think why and how, and really the why question unlocks the knowledge, and the how unlocks the solutions. So you can start with those two questions and get all the information you need and all the solutions you need without giving anybody anything.
Yeah, that's It's an interesting thought there, right? Two questions could change the flow of your job. They could change they change everything about your job site. Why and how. I love that, man. Leandris, this has been an awesome time catching up with you, man. Is there anything you want to close out with, or your two questions there round you out?
Nothing I want to close out with, man. The only thing I want to say is, lean builders do it better, so come join the wave.
I love it, Leandris. Thanks for your time this morning, brother. I appreciate it and look forward to connecting with you again soon.